Hello, everyone. Today we are hosting one session more with the law of one and raw contact. We are right now in the session 17, the second part. We have the first part the last week. So today we are going again to cover a little bit of densities and like maybe different planes, also a little bit of harvest, but Gabriel is the one who is going to talk about it. And I'm Tatiana. I never said that in the call, so I'm Tatiana. I also the other host. Daniel Hodap is today somewhere else. That's the reason because I'm joining again the call. And I think that's somehow like we are here together to exchange, to see, to have a little bit of expression, and to have our host here, Gabriel. So, welcome for the second part of the session 17.
Thank you, Tat, for the introduction. I wanted to start implementing something before we get into the session. Very short, and for everybody who is present right now, we're going to take three deep inhales and exhales just to set the tone of our conversation tonight. So before we get started, just inhale with me, and everybody who's watching from YouTube can also do it. Big inhale, hold at the top, and let go. Not forcing the air, just letting your body release all the air. Hold at the bottom. Second deep inhale. Hold and simply relax your diaphragm. Let all the air squeeze out naturally. Feel the relaxation. Third and last deep inhale and hold and let go. Naturally letting the body expel all the breath. Hold at the bottom. And just resume your breathing naturally as the body wants it. Welcome everybody to second part of session 17. Thank you for synchronizing your breaths with me. As Tatiana said, I am Gabriel for those who are possibly new and or those who are watching. So last part we left with the conversation of Jesus, and I think we covered everything that had to do with Jesus. So all of that is in part one. Here we're going to go on several topics. The one and most important one for me is the best way to be of service in this planet. So we're going to we're going to have a really good time there. So we're picking up on question 23, which begins, I don't think I covered this last time. So this question, Don actually begins by asking about karma and forgiveness being what stops or alleviates karma, but he stops. And he says that he'll come back to this question, which he does. We're going to cover that later. And in another session, not in this one. But then he asks, can you tell me why the Earth will be fourth density positive instead of fourth density negative after the cycle is complete, since it seems that there is a greater negative population? This is, even though it's 1981, this is a question that still comes up 43 years later. And it seems like our planet is negative because the system in which we function is implemented in a way that is designed to serve those of the negative path. Um, and so I think this clarifies a lot this question about what do I do because we're in such a negative planet. The truth that is that this is not a negative planet. So I'll share some of my thoughts and my experience dealing with this question over the past 5 years or so with people with all types of orientation and uh, viewpoints. But Ross says that the earth seems to be negative. This is due to the quiet, shall we say, horror, which is the common distortion which those good or positively oriented entities have towards the occurrences which are of your space-time present. However, those oriented and harvestable in the ways of service to others greatly outnumber those whose orientation towards service to self has become that of harvestable quality. So the earth seems to be negative, and Ra says here that this is due to the quiet horror, which is just a common attitude that humans have for this system that we have, this interaction, this relationship with each other. Quiet horror. It reminds me of Henry David Thoreau when he says, and I'll probably paraphrase, but most men live lives of quiet desperation. Right? We all keep quiet in this system in which we live, which to me doesn't really, to me, it doesn't indicate that we must speak, we must say something, we must act, but rather that we just take it for granted and say, well, that's just how it is. I don't believe that action is the way for us to show a contribution to the planet, although it's a valuable one, but it's not the main way in which we are of service. And we're going to get into that also in this session. But yeah, this answers the question that one, the earth seems to be negative, but this is just because people stay, quiet. Um, I think the song, I forget the song, somebody will know the title better than me, but The Sound of Silence, is it? Right? I think that's basically the theme behind it. People staying quiet and not acting or doing something. In my suggestion, it's more of an interchange than anything else. And another thing that is beautiful to know here is that those oriented positively here greatly outnumber those who are negative, harvestable, that is. So something to consider. Just imagine that the vast majority of people here are positively oriented and that if they stay quiet, it's just because they can't find the outlet. And I think we all know how much difficulty we seem to have at the beginning. And we say, oh, I don't know anybody who I can talk to about this. I don't know. I don't have people who can um, relate to me in this way. And interestingly, the answer to this conundrum that we find spiritually, because we seem to need a very particular niche of people whom which we can relate, is actually to stop looking for that particular niche. You're not going to find it. Everybody is your niche. Everybody is your brother and sister. And even if they don't relate to you at any level, if you can find a way to connect with them, then you free yourself and you free others. This can be a very long topic, but it's the truth. If you still find yourself in that dilemma of, I feel so alone because I don't have many people, I can relate to that and I understand. But I'm also here to tell you that the way to transcend that is to stop looking for that and find it within yourself so you can actually reflect that to everybody who doesn't seem to be in the vibe. in the vibration and so on. Um, this is a more open view, an open heart approach to finding the ways to be of service. So, next question, 24, Don says, in other words, there will be fewer negative entities being harvested into fourth density than there will be positive. Is this correct? And Ross says, this is correct. The great majority of your peoples will repeat their density. So, once again, this is something that we sort of know at this point. The vast majority of people are not even remotely interested in making this choice, which we'll talk about because we're going to uh, discover the nature or the source of the 51% and 95% graduation for both positive and negative, respectively. Next question is about Taras Bulba, Genghis Khan, and Rasputin. How do they get harvested to prior to the harvest? Ross says, it is the right privileged duty of those opening consciously the gate to intelligent infinity to choose the manner of their leaving of the density. Those of negative orientation who so achieve this right duty most often choose to move forward in their learned teaching of service to self, which makes sense. Negatives, why would they want to remain here? Why would they want to come back? And um, to to repeat is probably to risk losing polarity. And that's in essence what Ra is suggesting here. Josh Blue, you have your microphone unmuted. Question 26. Don says, is this the reason for what we call spontaneous combustion? Ra says, this is not correct. I guess Don uh, thought that the opening to intelligent infinity through the negative path causes spontaneous combustion. I'm not sure how he connected that, um, but it's not correct. And then Don asks, what causes this phenomenon? So I'm not going to read all of this, but it's just something spontaneous. It's a random occurrence, and I don't think there's much to get out of this. We don't have much more information on this. So I'm just going to skip over to question 29, where we get into more relevant information. And here Don is asking, am I to understand that the harvest will occur in the year 2011 or 2011, or will it be spread? So this is because I believe Ra already said that it would be 30 years or so from the moment they were channeling. And again, that is 2011, close to 2012, where we all know the hype of 2012. Ra says this is an approximation. We have stated we have difficulty with your time space. This is an appropriate, probable, possible time space nexus for harvest. Those who are not in incarnation at this time will be included in the harvest. So a couple of things here. It's an approximation. It's not fully 2011. I was jokingly thinking that because Ra tends to make mistakes with dates, I was thinking like, what if they wanted to say 2311? So we have like 300 more years for harvest. How does that change? I don't think we have a lot more indicators that it's a very narrow approximation. It's not so big, um, especially because in at least one or two more questions, Ra did suggest that some entities like General Patton, I think I've mentioned in the past that he wanted, I'm going to say he was rushing up to be reincarnated again so he could possibly make the harvest. And there's a reason for that, which we're going to discuss here. But yeah, that is one of the things that we get from here. It's an approximation. It's not exactly 2011, but it seems like it's already happening. Um, I don't know. I don't know for sure. And the other thing is that those who are not an incarnation at this time will be included in the harvest. To me, this means that people who have died and didn't reincarnate, but they were harvestable already, they are included in the harvest. That's my very limited interpretation. I did say in our last call that question two, I think it was my favorite. And second favorite would have to be this question 30. And you'll see why. This goes into the heart of everything that I stand for in this life, everything that I teach, that I help guide, and just like to talk about. So, out of all the over 2,600 questions, I think, that or exchanges between Don and Ra, this is probably top 10, top 20 of my favorite ones. And Don is asking here, well, if an entity wants to learn ways of it, wants to be of service to others rather than service to self while he is in this third density, are there best ways of being of service to others, or is any way just as good as any other way? And this is in essence the same question we have had in at least a couple of, we kind of heard this in session 14. I forget which question, when they said that the harvest is now. And then we got another clarification of this in session 15, when they talked about seeking the heart of self. And now we get a different slant on this answer. Ross says the best way to be of service to others has been explicitly covered in previous material. Note the word explicitly has been covered already. We will iterate briefly. The best way of service to others is the constant attempt to seek to share the love of the Creator as it is known to the inner self. This involves self-knowledge and the ability to open the self to the other self without hesitation. This involves, shall we say, radiating that which is the essence or the heart of the mind-body-spirit complex. This is the first paragraph, and I'll pause here. The best way of service is the constant attempt to offer yourself to the Creator in whatever practice you have. This involves the negation of you as an entity separate from reality and actively offering that feeling to that which is inherent in you. This is meditation, prayer, we could say. I think prayer is probably a more accurate description of this, because prayer is always done from the sense of self as a being, as an entity. And I've said it before. I think that's uh, the most humble view of ourselves as beings, as entities, because prayer in its ultimate form is surrendering, surrendering the self to that which is. So the constant attempt to seek to share the love of the Creator as it is known to the inner self. And this is how we offer ourselves to others. This doesn't mean, see, this doesn't mean talk to other people about this. like Ross said at the beginning of this session, less important information like this one that we share with you. More important is to share how we feel what the creator is. And this is not something verbal. It has nothing to do with actions or specific actions, but rather of your way of being. That's why Ross says this involves self-knowledge. Self-knowledge. Know yourself, what it means. Know yourself and the ability to open yourself to others without hesitation. Why do we hesitate? What's the story behind that doesn't allow us to open ourselves to others? And this is radiating that which is the essence or the heart of ourselves as it is known to you. Second part of this answer, they say, speaking to the intention of your question, the best way for each seeker in third density to be of service to others is unique to that mind-body-spirit complex. This means that the mind-body-spirit complex must then seek within itself the intelligence of its own discernment as to the way it may best serve other selves. This will be different for each. There is no best. There is no generalization. Nothing is known. Can we spend the next 40 minutes on this, please, and skip all the other questions and answers? Ah, I think we need to do a series where we just cover one question and just bask in that for the whole hour. It just makes the rest not so important. But all right, Ross said there is no best. But to my heart, this is the best. But no, to cover this, first, I want you to notice how the first paragraph just tells you precisely the the noumenal response. You see, the noumenal response here, that which seems intangible, abstract, not formed, is this knowledge of self as the creator and how to share that. Which again, I emphasize, this is not the preaching type of service, but rather, who are you? And why are you like that? What's the love that makes you be like that? And the second part speaks to the phenomenal response to what it is that you want to do. Now, here's something interesting because there are a couple of words that they use here that I actually use in my own teaching, which have to do with how do we find our active service, our mission, our purpose, all of these words that we use, which are meant to describe that which you love doing, that which you have so much of it that you can't keep it to yourself and you just want to share it openly to others, whatever that may be, right? So that is inner intelligence. They use that here, and discernment on the ways to serve others. They pointed that for each one of us, this is going to be different. And of course, there is no best. If you like to paint, that's all you do. You have to really go into that. You have to allow that to go through. Even if you're painting something that has nothing to do with spirituality, probably better actually. I wouldn't want the whole world to be spiritual. I want variety. And something that I find fascinating here is that in the spiritual path, there is there's something happening in our brains, in our minds. And I'll talk about the brain first. Um, there is the very well-known default mode network that is the active part of the brain, which is self-referential. Thought about myself, thought about myself, thought about myself. This is very active in um, people who do not meditate, and they have reinforced a lot this self-reflection. The majority of our thoughts are self-referential. Interestingly, after a couple of months of meditating, people begin to lower the amount of self-referential thought, and the default mode network is pacified. That energy is redirected to the task positive network, which is the one that creates solutions. It's that part of the brain on the right side that begins to perceive solutions and resolve problems, and it's inspiring and so on. And if anybody here has been meditating for a while, you'll know that at the beginning, it's unbearable to listen to so many self-referential thoughts. And over time, there is a sort of blissful sensation, yes, that you begin to feel more inspirational thoughts, more ideas, and so on. That is the discernment of an inner intelligence that is already brimming in you, but it's darkened by the clouds of self-referential thought. So by simply offering yourself to the creator in silence, the key is silence here. That doesn't mean calm your mind, by the way, no thoughts. It's just stop identifying with thought. Let the thoughts be. Like watching a river, very loud. Is there silence really? No. It's just that you are okay with the sound of the river. It's flowing. It's moving. A lot of rocks, little things moving, but somehow you merge with the river. It's not bothering you. And that begins to create the space in which you can listen to yourself. And here's the discernment. All those self-referential thoughts, not you. Even these inspirational thoughts, not you, but they speak truth. And you feel aligned with that truth. Oh, I can go on for a while here, but we have more questions. So, yeah, beautiful answer here. And please go check. I have a couple of notes here. Check question 14. I'm going to call it 1014. First number being the session, second being the question. 1014, 15.7, 15.14, and 17.2. Check all of those, and you'll see a pattern there for this particular service. Moving on to question 31. Don says, thank you very much. I don't wish to take up extra time by asking questions over again. Remember that Ra said we've answered this already. But thank God that Don asked this. I wish he could have asked even more and Ra would repeat the answer in different ways. That's how we learn, by repetition. So if we had more of this. Don continues and says, some are so important, I try to ask some similar questions in different ways to expand on the answer. Yes, thank you, Don. The question at the end is, in the book OSP, it states that if an individual is more than 50% for others, that is, goes over the 50% service to others and is less than 50% of service to self, then he's harvestable. Is this a correct statement? Ross says, this is correct. If the harvesting is to be of the positive four-dimensional level, that's because there is a negative harvest. More on this, Don says, what must be the entity's percentage, shall we say, if he is to be harvested to or for the negative? Ross says the entity who wishes to pursue the path of service to self must attain a grade of 5. That is 5% service to others, 95% service to self. It must approach totality. The negative path is quite difficult to attain harvestability upon and requires great dedication. More on this, and I'll give some of my thoughts. Don says, why is the negative path so much more difficult a path to attain harvestability upon than the positive? Ross says, this is due to a distortion of the law of one, which indicates that the gateway to intelligent infinity be a gateway at the end of a straight and narrow path, as you may call it. To attain 51% dedication to the welfare of other selves is as difficult as attaining a grade of 5% dedication to other selves. The, shall we say, sinkhole of indifference is between those two. So, a couple of things here. My interpretation of this 51%, we often say that this is not measurable, and that's for a good reason, because only we can possibly imagine or assess how much. By the way, my view of this is how many thoughts do you have that are about yourself and all about yourself, and which ones are for others, which is not something that you have to be measuring all the time, but just I wouldn't even suggest that people do this, but in general, we see that there is a tendency to have less thoughts about ourselves and more about others in this path. And I would suggest actually that I would encourage people to just follow whatever practice resonates with them, which creates a dissolution of the only thing that could accrue negative polarity is the idea of a separate being. Because that's really what it is. In practical terms, a positive being is an expression of God which has no identity. And you hear this in the Confederation's philosophy a lot when they talk about entities, and there's a question of what's their name, where are they from, and so on. And the answer is always, who cares? It's the message that stands out. Whereas on the negative path, they love names because it's an ego. And that ego formed in third density only. So if we have that ahead of time, we have this lesson, then what's happening in third density is the creator is offering itself, all right, who do you want to be? You want to be somebody? Here it is, negative path, service to self. You're serving the self, which is a separate self. Service to the separate self, we should say. Service to others should be service to the self, the only self that there is, which obviously to understand this, you have to eliminate me and you. There is no me and you. There's only self. And we're all enjoying it. We can have a lot of fun with that. We don't need to believe in a separate self. So that is what we do. And that's why it requires a lot of effort to maintain an illusion. You have to have your imagination 95% powered to believe that you are a separate being. It takes a lot of effort. And at the same time, on third density, it's quite difficult for you to experience reality through a very convincing perception of separation, a mind and a body that feels so real that you begin to dissolve that idea and disidentify from this body mind. And yet, that is the path. There's a common fear that I may lose my whole personality if I do that. That's the ego clinging to it, saying, please don't let me go. will lose everything. Whereas a shining personality just comes bright because you're not doing it. It's effortless. It's, it's you, the creator, playing at this game for a moment. There's no attachment, no responsibility in the sense of being responsible for an image. And yeah, that's the beauty of it. So this 51% to me represents more than half of your attitude towards life needs to be in service of this understanding. If you don't have this understanding, then guess what? There's time for you to repeat. That's great. There's no problem there. And it's not you who is repeating, it's just the experience that you call you. I would suggest that we also stop thinking of ourselves as, oh, I may repeat. Look at your thoughts and see which thoughts repeat. What's the problem? They're repeating because they haven't been processed. We call them traumas, actually, when they are very complex. Traumas. I still have a trauma. Well, that's just unprocessed experience. Period. Keeps repeating. We maybe it's in a subdensity at some level, and we call it, I have a trauma on my orange ray. You see? It's all the same thing. It's all a holographic interplay of experiences that need to be processed. And so each one of us represents a particular experience of the creator, a thought of the creator, which needs to be processed. So how do we process it? Seven densities, seven chakras, bringing it up. Anyhow, much more to say here. The sinkhole of indifference, I don't know if I talked about this, but this is just, in essence, and just to put it a little bit comical, I'm not sure if I'm an ego. I'm not sure if I am the one. Period. I don't know which one I am. In fact, I sometimes call this the positive and negative ego. And I'm reversing here to confuse you because I can and I will. But the positive ego is the one that goes uh, higher and higher in identity, right? That's the one that approaches 95%. It's a positive because it's inflating itself, right? And the negative ego is the one that still remains within the sinkhole of indifference, but says, God is over there and I'm here. I'm not worthy of God. There's still a separation and there's still a feeling of, I'm just still little me, poor little me. But God, that's divine. Not me, of course. And subtly, what you're saying is God is incomplete. I am different than God. So, yeah. Here we get into some abstract thought of metaphysical subplanes and so on. I'm not the best to talk about this, but yeah, I'll try my best. This is not my forte. I think we're up to question 34. Yes. No. Yes. So question 34, Don says, well, then if an entity is harvested into fourth density with a grade, let's say 51% for others, 49% of self for self, what level of the fourth density would he go into? I'm assuming there are different levels of the fourth density. So he's referring to the subdensities, which makes sense. And Ross says this is correct, meaning that they go to a particular subdensity. Each enters the subdensity which vibrates in accordance with the entity's understanding. I think this is also true in third density in a way. I don't know how different it might be in fourth density, but it makes sense that, for example, we talked about Jesus, and Jesus was of the highest level of that sub level of that octave, just confusing. Four density, seven levels, he was at the highest in that. He was 4.7, let's say, right? And so we see the same here. There are 3.3s, 3.5s. Ra calls this, if my nomenclature is appropriate here, they call it true color entity. when they refer to true color entity is where do you mostly vibrate? What's your chakra of preference, which is not of the conscious mind, it's just a natural thing that's happening, right? We all know that Carla was green ray, right? So that type of thing. How many levels do we have here in the third density at this time? I love Ra's answer. This is the mystical answer that everybody should get always when we ask a question like this. The third density has an infinite number of levels. I just love it. Uh, it's an answer it doesn't answer anything. Question 36. Don says, I've heard that there are 7 astral and 7 devacanic primary levels. Is this correct? Ross says, you speak of some of the more large distinctions in levels in your inner planes. That is correct. Well, who inhabit the astral and who inhabit the devacanic planes? Ross says, entities inhabit the various planes due to their vibrational nature. The astral plane varies from thought forms in the lower extremities to enlightened beings who become dedicated to teach learning in the higher astral planes. In the devacanic levels, or planes, as you call them, are those whose vibrations are even more close to the primal distortions of love light. Beyond these planes, there are others. So this is um, astral levels and entities who inhabit there. Like I said, I'm not the best to describe all of this. Question 38, Don says, well, does, this is difficult, he admits. Our physical plane, are there subplanes to what we call our physical plane here? Ross says, noticing his difficulty on trying to formulate the question, they say, you are correct. This is difficult to understand, which is these subplanes that exist here. So Ra, again, begins with saying, there are an infinite number of planes. That's important to know. So we stop trying to categorize things. I don't know about you. I love structure. I love to see things, in a way that there is cohesion. But certain organizations, for some reason, are just absolutely um, unimportant to me. Like this: how many planes do we have, and what kind of entities do live there? It doesn't seem practical to me. Maybe in the future. But Ross says, in your particular space-time continuum distortion, there are 7 subplanes of mind, body, spirit complexes. You will discover the vibrational nature of these 7 planes as you pass through your experiential distortions, meeting other selves of the various levels which correspond to the energy influx centers of the physical vehicle. So these are the 7 subplanes, the ones that Ron is talking about here. And I think it's fair to say that this is closely related to the true color entity that Ra talks about too, which is what they're saying. You're going to see this. You will discover the vibrational nature of all of these planes, these 7 planes, as you experience life, meeting other people whose vibrations are of those particular energy influx centers. They finish saying the invisible or inner third density planes are inhabited by those who are not of body complex natures, such as yours. So these are the astral entities, so-called. That is, they do not collect about their spirit mind complexes a chemical body, meaning they don't have a body, physical body, chemical, like us. Nevertheless, these entities are divided in what you may call an artificial dream within a dream into various levels. In the upper levels, desire to communicate knowledge back down to the outer planes of existence becomes less due to the intensive learned teaching which occurs upon these levels. So I think this is a truncated description of the experience of entities in astral levels, which to me are just simply, if a thought is an entity, right? You have a thought, whatever thought that may be, that's an entity. And that thought exists in the astral plane. Yes. So it's not so complicated unless we want to really describe it. And then I just don't have the power for that. But the premise is that, and it's undeniable that obviously every thought is an entity and all thoughts are in time space. They do not have bodies like we have. Here's a good question. Don says, then is it necessary to penetrate one plane at a time as we move from what we call third density physical through these planes? Ra says, it has been our experience that some penetrate several planes at one time. Others penetrate them slowly. Some, in eagerness, attempt to penetrate the higher planes before penetrating the energies of the so-called lower or more fundamental planes. This causes energy imbalance. You will find ill health, as we call this distortion, to frequently be the result of a subtle mismatch of energies in which some of the higher levels are being activated by the conscious attempts of the entity, while the entity has not penetrated the lower energy centers or subdensities of this density. So, in summary, there is no curriculum for everybody to go through gradually or in a specific way. And thank God for that, because we need variety. We love variety. And so some people may be able to penetrate pretty fast and with great coherence all of these levels. People like Ramana Maharshi always comes to mind as an extreme example of suddenly activated, fully realized being. And, others like us, I'll put myself as an example, very gradual opening and understanding. And, perhaps to me, in reference to me, others are a lot more slow, others are a lot faster. There is a spectrum, and that is totally unimportant. What's important is that there is balance at every moment, balance in every single case. It is not of activation. This life is not about rushing to activate anything, and that's why they say some in eagerness attempt to penetrate the higher planes before penetrating the energies of the so-called fundamental planes. So this can even happen inadvertently. Some people report. In fact, I just had a conversation last night with somebody who admitted to me that she feels pretty shaken by her reality at this point. And lo and behold, she also, of course, had out of the blue, in a very normal situation, had a very mystical experience that when we have our perception of reality so convincingly based on separation, which is natural, we all have it at the beginning, and then suddenly we experience this, this can shake our sense of being. But there are some people who just becoming aware of this, they just want to open, activate, and do more work. I believe going into substance abuse, which is not the regular drug use, but any substance for the purpose of trying to activate and getting more experience and just getting a little obsessed with spirituality, which is a phenomenon that's happening right now because of, well, globalism. We can bring ayahuasca all over the world and uh, all kinds of things that we can do. There are so many ways in which we can get obsessed with this and not bring balance, not bring a sort of equilibrium to this approach. And that's the ill health that Ron talks about. Is it irreversible? I don't think so. But it's a very, shocking um, portion of time that people experience. So yeah, there are many things, and it's becoming quite common, and I think it's going to continue to happen because of the level of collective ignorance that we have on this path. That's why it's probably helpful for resources to be available for everybody. So people can make an informed decision and they know what they're getting into. Uh, I feel like I have a good share of experiences with people who come to me from different parts of the world, and I see this, and it doesn't have to be, it's just a lack of knowledge of what they are experiencing. In any case, we can spend a long time here too. Um, but let's move on. Question 40. Don asks, is there a best way to meditate? Ross says simply no. Um, I have my own opinion on this. I feel because Ra has suggested in other parts that the most useful way to meditate is to seek that um, silence, right? Several parts. I think that Don was asking, is there a best way to, because Don did ask a lot of questions about uh, should we create an isolated system, where we can meditate properly? Is it better to do this in meditation or do that? So I think that's what Ra is referring to here. But at the same time, yes, there is no particular way to meditate, and that is true. However, can we call everything meditation? I don't think so. It'll be easy for us to say, oh, I don't need to meditate. I'll just keep doing my thing, and that's meditation because everything is the creator, right? It's a sort of bypass that we can get into. So just a little thing to throw in there. I don't think most people listening to this or you in this call uh, have a misconception around this, but just sharing my thoughts. Little pause for a second. Okay. Question 41. We're almost close to the end here. Don says, at this time near the end of the cycle, how are reincarnations into the physical allocated, shall I say, on this planet? So a question about how are we allocating reincarnation? I love Don's vocabulary. It's so structured, so mechanical. Love it. Ross says entities wishing to obtain critically needed experience in order to become harvestable are incarnated with priority over those who will, without too much probable possible doubt, need to re-experience this density. So I think there are a couple more questions on this, but this, in essence, is there is a priority to which those who can benefit from this last experience in third density to be harvestable obviously have first pick for reincarnation over those who are known that they're not going to be able to make it. And that's a sort of, you know, good sportsmanship in the astral planes. I like to see it that way. They just look at each other and say, like, man, I'm not going to make it. You go. You're closer. You go ahead. You got it. You got this. How long has this been going on? This type of allocation, says Don. Ross says this has been going on since the first individual entity became conscious of its need to learn the lessons of this density. This was the beginning of what you may call a seniority by vibration. So it makes sense. It's just an efficiency system. That's all it is. It's an efficiency in the system of graduation and evolution and so on. Can you explain what you mean by seniority of vibration or by vibration, says Don. And Ross says, this will be the final question of this session of working, and this will be the final question I covered, of course. Ross says, the seniority by vibration is the preferential treatment, shall we say, which follows the ways of the law of one, which encourages harvestable individuals. Each individual becoming aware of the time of harvest and the need, on a self level, to bend mind, body, and spirit towards the learned teaching of these lessons is given priority in order that this entity may have the best possible chance, shall we say, of succeeding in this attempt. So, just another description of what I said before. It makes sense that those entities who are near harvestable percentage of service to others or service to self are given priority. Like I said, it's just good sportsmanship on one level or simply efficiency of the mechanics of graduation. And that brings us to the end of all the information that I wanted to share in session 17. The rest, as usual, is maintenance and maintenance of the contact and goodbyes as usual. That's all for me, Ted.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you. I think something really important here, a point actually when Don asked, like, is there any better meditation or what is the one we should follow? And the answer was clearly no, there is not a better or perfect or way to meditate. And sometimes we literally, Gabriel was repeating that several times today, we dig into the hole to find, or we compare ourselves to other ones, thinking that the experience of that one is going to work with me. And that's a kind of mistake we somehow happens quite often in our lives till we remember that that special person accept these special conditions to experience this life, and we are, all of us are totally different. Like, yes, we are one, but we are totally different from each other because each of us has a different um, distortions, different examples of how to achieve a certain level of experience and how to receive all these beautiful experiences we are already planned some time ago. So there is not the better way, there is not the perfect way. The way you are doing is exactly right now. And yeah, again, like, try to remember that you don't need the tools from outside. And I actually, we were yesterday, no, that wasn't, like, a couple of days ago, in an interview with Jonathan Town, and he was asking, like, hey, and how's it been your process? What do you think is the best thing people can achieve something? And we're like, we are perfect, and we touched that last session again, like, we are perfect as we are, but we tend to compare and we tend to forget that we have already all the tools there for us. So in this session is in several times this kind of pointing out, like, yeah, that's special from this person, or that's exactly, there is, I cannot tell more about it because each of you are different, and the way you are doing it is exactly the best way you can do something. And also because it tends, like, do these overrating new holistic ways to approach spirituality, uh, we became somehow, like, more distorted, and we try to escape actually what we already know. So be aware of what you are doing and why you are doing. Ask yourself always, why I'm doing that. And if the question is like, I don't know, it's like, that's not the way, then maybe you need to do it because you know already everything. So start of digging in different parts at the same time and comparing this and that. Just look at yourself maybe at the mirror and say, like, hey, what I'm doing, and then repeat to yourself, I love you, and that's enough. So thank you, Gabriel, for the session again. And participants, it's time to ask questions. You are there, you are also part of this beautiful community. um Go ahead, because yeah, like, I think someone just said, like, okay, yeah, there is like a quote. Quo gets into more details about some types of meditation to get to know your higher self, guys, etc. Yes, indeed. But remember always that that's exactly to the type of person who is asking. They are like a little abroad, but you already have your questions. Shar, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yes, I wanted Gabriel to send the list of your top questions you talked about, that there is a similarity between all of them. If you can just type it or say it again so I'm ready to write it down would be great. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you, Shar. I have a bunch, but particular to this line of inquiry, which is service. Um, the thing is that, yeah, I have like an epicenter, and then there are things around it. But in the epicenter, take note of 1014, which are exercises accomplished with meditation or silence, speaking of it. 15.7 is about the offering the self to the creator, which is also reflected in this one that we read today. 1514 is seeking the heart of self. You'll find a similarity in all of them. And the last two are 17.2, which is the one we read last week, and it's about helping others to grow, helping others to move into fourth density. And the last one is 1730, which is the one that we read today, the best way to service or to serve others. Hope that helps. And while somebody gets encouraged to also ask a question, I want to say thank you, Tad, for mentioning everything about meditation that you said. Um, it's a, that's the key distinction, isn't it? To know that while there is no proper way to meditate, meditation does have a particular direction. This is the same thing as Ross said in was it in this session when they were talking about providing catalyst, right? The most efficient catalyst that we can provide is to radiate the creator as we know it. So if I scream at you and I call you names and I denigrate you and say all these things, I'm still giving you catalyst, right? So is that the right catalyst? Is that what we should all strive for? To be, this type of person? No, of course not. We all know in our hearts that that's not the proper catalyst. So, or the more efficient catalyst for growth would be something that is radiating the creator. It's a huge difference, right? But they're both catalysts. So in the same way, we can say, well, meditating is everything. I just drive my car and I'm meditating. I'm doing this, mowing the lawn or activities, and that's meditating. Maybe, but it must have a direction, an orientation that brings to a specific state or recognition. And the highest recognition, again, and this is where I'll just point out to a couple of things that Ross said. There are more, but these are the two that stands out to me, which is the prerequisite of mental work is the ability to retain silence of self at a steady state when required by the self. The mind must be open like a door. The key is silence. In another part, they said, this is session 49, and they say the passive meditation involving the clearing of the mind, the emptying of the mental jumble, which is characteristic of mind complex activity among your peoples, is efficacious for those whose goal is to achieve an inner silence as a base from which to listen to the Creator. This is a helpful tool and is by far the most generally useful type of meditation as opposed to contemplation or prayer. So again, my point is that even though everything is catalyst and everything, yes, we could say it's meditation if we want to, the most efficient catalyst goes in the expression of the creator as it's known to itself. And the most efficient meditation, obviously, is the one that aims at providing this silence. And I'll give you one practical point. Even though it's true that we all have a different river flowing in front of us, we are all the witness of that river. And that witness is the self. There is no difference between your witness and my witness. My awareness is not different than yours. Just know that. And that is the ultimate silence that you need, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Gabriel. Yeah, like I remember, I was also reading a book last time about meditation, and that was like written like meditation is also, if you focus on just one type of meditation, you are losing the state of meditation because you are already like just repeating an action. So try
Mhm.
to combine like different types of meditation, but being aware what you are doing. And I also remember someone tell me once, like, meditate is also just do the dishes. That's also meditation. Be aware of what you are doing, and exactly in that state that like you took the sponge, you took the soap, and you are doing a movement. Which movement are you doing there? It's not like you, okay, fast, 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 and done. Be aware, because that also is the catalyst. That is the reaction of a moment. That is the reaction of something you are empowering yourself to do so, and you are do it with all your senses, though we think not. So be aware, not always like the same type of things, otherwise it's going to become a routine. And yes, routine are fine because we are here to experience a routine. But if you are doing that, being not conscious, then it's like again, everything goes to just the first point, like we are not aware. So yeah. I don't know, I think that was the plenty of questions we have today, like just a couple of them. And in our chat is not really much mentioned. Just seeing here, chart listed exactly what you said about it, like about the questions, the order of it. And oh yeah, sorry, Lynn, you were there. Go ahead.
Yeah, just maybe share the back to the meditation. I'm practicing a few days about the void, the blackness, which somehow in very short moment I don't know how to explain that. Mm, I realized, no, remember, maybe this word, that was our original state. That's that state, like I've forgotten, like billions of years, very, very long. But that is our origin, is my revelation, so to speak. It is a void, it is a black, but it is infinite. It is just very vague. Maybe I said that's what I come from. Then I reflect to the Ra one said the black no black hole, right? The black hole, which means all the sixth or seventh density go back to the creator, right? The black hole we see the outer range is bright, 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 but then if you know the quantum photonic the spectrum is the light is become very light, very white, it's become dark, dark. It's exactly depicted in the black hole. Black hole inside is black, right? But outside is so bright. If we go in into that infinite blackness, but it's also a void. Somehow, I I feel in a very short moment that is where I come from. And if I try to, then that's just so short moment. Then I try to meditate back to my original state, where that I or not I don't know. Okay, come from. Then it's a reflect to, in Vishnu created everything. Say Vishnu is there, he just blow, then every illusion come to manifested to reality, to what kind of reality. So the dream or the illusion, the holograph come to the dream, come to dream. But before that, that was void, and infinite. You can see the awareness dwell in the blackness, in the void, which is the original state or the home where we come from. Indeed, we have never leave the home. It's just a matter of state. Maybe I'm a little bit confusing you. I'm sorry. And yeah, this is I tried back to that state again. That was where I come from.
Can I offer some thoughts, Lynn?
Sure.
I'm delighted with everything that you are sharing. And my central thought on this is that you listen, if you can actually listen to yourself in this recording afterwards, and listening to everything that you said as the mind explaining the experience of exhaling, relaxing, and saying, wait, I come from there. I, the mind, come from this nothingness. Because the mind is the one that sees a void, sunyata.
Yeah.
Wuji, I think Wuji is the name that is in Taoism to this, right? And many other names. It's just always silence, void, blackness. This is a description of the mind's source by the mind. So the mind looks at its source and says, I see nothing, because there is no thing there. It's like objects looking at space and saying, I don't see an object. Where is the object? Or sound looking at silence and saying, where is the vibration of silence? There is none. And reposition the self or identity to that which is the source of the mind, and everything is all right. So there's always going to be that mystery. The mind will always look at its source in mystery because it cannot find anything objective. And the mind's purpose is to find objective things. Whereas from the point of view, and that's why you get this, actually your feeling of saying, that's where I come from. It's because your sense of self is actually rearranging with the truth. I, the mind, come from here. But then if you rearrange the self being as that which is the source of the mind, then you see this as breathing. Every single vibration of your body, your thoughts, your in relationships with anybody, it's just a breathing. It's that expansion and contraction, expansion of contraction of just one thing. So there is no separate mind from the void or anything. It's just this constant flux of in and out, a heartbeat, if you will. So yeah, I'm delighted with the way you describe it. And I encourage you to go and listen to yourself and just see how the mind, that's what the mind is saying. My journey back to this black hole. That's what I would title your contribution today. My journey back to myself.
Yeah, the journey sounds like a treasury, but for me, it's just like plug in. Is boom, then it's there. But there, if I dwell there, then I feel the one still it knows itself, but still its desire seek, because there's still unknowingness. The one seek the infinite desire of knowing the self. So it's still itself, or I feel in the darkness, in the void. There's a design to still to seek, still not feel, how to say that, it's not satisfaction, you know. I feel this thought or conscious still seek a little bit how to say that uncertainty of about the infinite. So the self is continue in the infinite to search the infinite self.
Because that is the natural, that's the natural law. Is something that you experience continually and is seeking for more and more and more, and that's the normal experience, and that's sometimes that
And I don't feel this is my experience. I feel this is not my feeling. I feel it is a one feeling. You know, it's I'm in such state. I'm not in my normal personal state. I don't know who am I, or there's no I anymore. You know, but there's this conscious still continue to seek. I think the mystery is endless. You know, there's always is a desire. It's not the one just chill there in the darkness, in the void, and that's it. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's a quite. Sometimes I confuse myself. Okay, sorry for that. And
Hilder, you have a question. Do you mind to go ahead?
Hi, yeah, I'm gonna keep it short because I know we don't have that much time left. Thank you guys so much for being here. It's been really, really good listening to you. I don't think I have actually a question. It's more like a reflection on what Lynn has been talking about. I really enjoyed what you said, Lynn. Thank you. And I have, yes, what I was thinking about within that thing is I had this experience not too long ago, both two experience, waking up like from a deep sleep and remembering being in deep sleep. And the minute I woke up, I was really scared because I didn't remember who I was. It took me a while to be like, oh, okay, I'm in this body, and it was very scary experience. And then I was doing some breathing, very vigorous breathing exercises, and I fainted. And then when I came back to myself, I had this same experience. It took a while, a little bit of time to be like, what? Like, who? What's my name? Where am? Who is in this body? And felt very alien to, and very scary. And at the same time, I think like meditating and being able to go into the void, there's such a chance for you to reprogram. Like I can reprogram myself, my mind, when I have this chance of, oh, whoa, I can be anew. Like, the only thing I can change ever in this lifetime, at least, it's in my head. That I cannot control anybody else, any situation, anything, that happens around me, only what I think. So when going into the void, it gets like a blank slate, and then you come in again into your body, and it's like, an opportunity. Like, it's like a reborn. It's being reborn, actually. Like that chance you have. Like, whoa, I can actually just drop everything that's happened, this trauma stuff, whatever it is. Like, I can actually just start new. I was just thinking that was just came to me. So yeah, it's pretty cool exercise to be able to go there. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I super super thankful for your exchange. I think I saw some smiles here as well when you were talking about it, and Gabriel was also smiling.
yeah, because the trauma is the thoughts, the conscious think that way was that. You know, if you go back to the voice, like to total reset, button, you press the reset button. I think that is a way to clean up the trauma, because all the trauma is just an imprint on the conscious. You think that is, because everything experience, remind, is a feeling. Whatever we do in the life, the only remind is a memory. But what is memory? Memory is a feeling that moment we have. So there's an imprint in the cellular, in the body, in the mind. I do believe it's also in the body. We incarnated with all the memories from the past life or the parallel life in the cellular level. This is, but you go to avoid, but your mind hold on that. The conscious never dies. Hold on that. But if we go avoid to just like reset, I come back. I think this is a way to detach all the mind hold trauma, right? Yeah. It's forgiving to let's go, really good to let's go place.
I just remember, I don't know if guys you are watching series or not. There's this series called Umbrella Academy. And actually there is a character which is called Klaus, which experience exactly that. Like he is the one who can always die and reincarnate, and he's like, okay, wait, I need to die. I need to die, and then I can solve the puzzle again. And maybe if you want to have like a funny moment, Umbrella Academy, they uh-huh. Umbrella Academy. There are like different roles. There is also someone who number 5 would jump in the time. But that one, Klaus, is like what you are describing. If you want maybe to have a fun day with yourself. But yeah. I just going to close the call today because we are reaching our time. And for that, again, thank you, every one of you, for your questions, what we were talking about today, for your laughs, for your faces, for your expressions. And Gabriel, if you want to share something by close it, that will be great as well.
Yeah, I find one of the most beautiful things, which always reminds me of Josh, just Josh, not Josh Blue, when we talked on August, and how we, in these conversations, we just build upon each other. And I'm just going to build upon what Lynn said of this desire that is always present. And quote Ra when they say that the original desire is for entities to seek and become one. That's the original desire. It would always be present in the mind, not our minds, but the mind. Because the mind wanting to know itself, the highest desire is to return. And that's what you felt, Lynn. That's why it feels so ineffable and glorious, beautiful. So when we put that desire, whatever it is in life, and that's why we find that we stop doing so many things we used to do for pleasure, entertainment, and so on. It's because you're listening to that desire. And very congruent with this session, don't force yourself to stop having the entertainments and the things that you like doing and the desires and the fantasies and everything else, because that would be trying to force yourself. So keep it balanced. Just keep being you. Like Ross says, that which is not needed falls away. You won't even notice. You just be something then, oh, okay, I don't need it anymore. But that desire is still present and you're still seeking, but that seeking becomes just single pointed in one offering, which happens at any moment, covering meditation again. Doesn't have to be sitting, zazen in a particular way, just being in the moment. That's the highest meditation. Whether you do it sitting, surrounded by incense and a lot of paraphernalia, or you just do it while driving. Like I said, contradicting myself here, but it's true. It's the essence of meditation that we carry. And that's just an inevitable process. You're not pushing it, you're not resisting it. It's just happening. Just open yourself to it. That's all I got. Thank you so much, everybody. Hilder, it was nice seeing you today. I haven't seen you in a while. Mika, if you're still there, I recognize you. I see you. It's beautiful to see you too, and everybody else.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
So thank you, everyone. Remember, next Thursday again, same channel, same hour, 1 p.m. New York, 7 p.m. European time, in this case, Berlin. We are going to cover the session 18 because we finished today, the session 17. That's funny. In the next session, there is like super funny because Don is asking like, where is Ra right now? So we are going to know that a little bit. And yeah, enjoy the time here. You can rewatch as much as you want this recording. And we are super grateful that you were enjoying today this time with all these people and continuing your path. Thank you so much and see you next time.